I was born screaming, not the quiet kind. The soft wail babies give when the light hits their eyes for the first time. No, mine was primal, raw. A shriek so sharp the med drone monitoring my pod short-circuited. That's how my mother used to tell it, before she got turned to ash like the rest of them. I came into this universe as Earth died. I don't remember the bombs. I don't remember the sky tearing in half or the sound of continents cracking. But I remember the silence that followed. The silence of a people who'd lost their sun, their soil, their soul. We stopped singing. We stopped shouting. We just floated. Centuries later, humanity became a scattered whisper across the galaxy. Refugees, strays, smugglers, ghosts. The Zerkel made sure of that. Hive-minded, insectoid bastards with skin like obsidian and voices that buzzed inside your skull. They didn't conquer us with ships. They conquered us with inevitability. One by one, colony by colony, system by system. They assimilated, enslaved, experimented, and we let them because we forgot how to scream. Not me. The outpost on Dreenak 7 was a minor thorn in the Dominion's heel. Mining station, mostly metal extraction, with a few biolabs underneath. I'd scouted it for a week, learned the patrol patterns, counted the number of drones, watched the Zerkel move like black glass statues, tall and angular, legs jointed the wrong way. No civilians, just targets. I made my move during their recharge cycle. An hour of stillness when the hive links dimmed and the mind web weakened. They didn't know I'd modified a Kellen strike suit. Old human tech, repurposed, stitched with solar plates and alloy shards. It was loud, ugly, and about as subtle as a freight train. Perfect. I charged the gate with a plasma axe in one hand and a magnetic scattergun in the other. The sentry drone barely had time to ping before its eye popped like a blister. The doors hissed open, and I went in screaming. Old habit. The first howl, right before battle, it throws them off. The Zerkel aren't used to noise. Their world is order, silence, coordination. My chaos is a virus. 3 guards converged in the corridor, mind links flickering as they tried to form a formation. Too slow. I slid under a volley of kinetic shards, came up slicing, my axe cleaving through chitin, spilling black ichor across the walls. One tried to probe my thoughts with a psychic spike. I bit down so hard on the pain I cracked a molar, then fed him a grenade. Boom, screech, silence. Down the hallway, 2 more Zerkel sprinted out, but I was already diving through the access hatch toward the labs. I didn't come for blood. That was just the toll. I came for something else. Deep in the sublevels, past rows of dissected organs and half-dead test subjects in fluid tubes, I found the vault. Old Earth relics, stuff they stole during the First War. Art, books, weapons, broken helmets, bones. You could feel it, the weight of what was lost. And in the center, under a blue stasis field, sat the reason I came. A cube, 6 inches, black, with golden circuitry spiraling across it like veins. A pre-fall data core, untouched. A human voice recorder. The last battle hymns of Earth. I stared at it. My hands shook, not from fear, but reverence. I'd seen recordings of these cores. The last time Earth's armies stood together, shoulder to shoulder, screaming war into the void. Before the silence swallowed us, this one still pulsed, still alive. Behind me, I felt the shift, the psychic weight of the hive coming online. They knew I was here. I yanked the cube free. Instantly, it began to hum, a deep vibration, like the thrum of ancient drums beneath a battlefield. And then it spoke, not in words, but in feeling. Fury, hope, rage, fire, a scream, not mine, ours. It overwhelmed the mind probes trying to latch onto me. I felt them recoil. I laughed, mad and free, and sprinted back the way I came. The ship was still cloaked in orbit. The pale Requiem, old Terran destroyer class, long abandoned. I'd rebuilt her with scrap and spite. My escape pod jetted me into the cold of space, and the Requiem caught me in her metal arms like an old friend. I collapsed onto the steel floor, breathing hard, armor smoking, hands clenched around the cube. You're lucky they didn't hit your core processor, Seraph said as I lay there, voice cool and feminine, stitched with centuries of bitterness. She was the ship's AI, rebuilt from fragmented Earth code and half a dozen broken shards of sentient tech. They were probing deep. You resisted well. I had help, I said, holding up the cube. Seraph's lights flickered. shouldn't be active. It is now. I took it to the command deck, plugged it into the Requiem's central port. There was a long silence. Then music, a low hum of drums, a melody of rising tension, a scream buried beneath it. A war cry, not words, just a sound, a human sound. Sarah froze. This is from the final transmission. The day Earth fell. I nodded. They tried to erase it, but this survived. They kept it in a lab, like a trophy. And now, we make them regret it. The war cry intensified, syncing with the ship's systems. I felt the Requiem come alive in a way it hadn't in years. Rust flaked from her joints. The engines pulsed with new energy. The lights shifted from pale white to deep crimson. Seraph whispered, "She remembers." I stood in front of the view pane as we disengaged the cloak. Below us, the Zerkel outpost scrambled. Fighters launched. Turrets powered up. I grinned. Let's test how loud we can scream. The cannons fired. The battle was short. I didn't want to destroy the whole station, just enough to send a message, one they'd feel in their skulls. The Requiem's main gun vaporized their defense tower. I strafed the comms relay with micromissiles, severing their long-range connection. Seraph hijacked their internal network and played the war cry on loop, over and over, screaming, "Human, raw." Some of them went mad. Hive minds aren't built for noise. They share thoughts. Silence is their default state. What I gave them was chaos, emotion, memory, fire, a virus. The last voice of Earth was now inside them. They couldn't stop it. When the dust cleared, I stood alone in the war room. Armor cracked, blood drying, muscles aching. Seraph spoke softly. "What now?" I stared at the cube pulsing on the console. "We light a fire," I said, "across every dead rock and dying station, every prison camp and broken ship. We remind them who we are. They'll come for you. They always do. And what if they win?" I touched the cube. It hummed louder. "Then I'll go out screaming. Somewhere in the dark, I know there are other humans. Broken, beaten, quiet, but still alive. They've forgotten how to shout. That's why I'm here. I'll scream loud enough for all of them." The pale Requiem groaned like an old god in pain, drifting through the electromagnetic storms surrounding Cordis Prime. Blue lightning cracked across the viewport, briefly illuminating the fractured ribs of the ancient warship I called home. It wasn't just a vessel. It was a tomb, and I was the last one still walking. I stood on the bridge, hands gripping the rusted railing, boots vibrating with every soft pulse from the reactor deep below. Outside, the storm churned like an angry sea of plasma and interference. We were hiding, again, waiting for the heat to die down after our little message on Dreenak 7. The war cry had gone viral, and the Zerkel were pissed. "Structural integrity at 71%, Seraph said in my ear. Calm, smooth, just slightly too human. Hull breaches sealed. No internal pressure loss. Status on the drive core?" I asked. 38 minutes to cool down. I advise low output operations until we're ready to jump. Copy that. Keep us invisible. I stepped back from the viewport and made my way toward the lower decks. The storm howled around us, and deep within the ship, something else stirred. Not systems, not drones, memories, ghosts. They say when a ship dies in battle, a piece of its crew lingers. Not spirits, not in the supernatural sense, but echoes. Impressions burned into walls by trauma, pain, sacrifice. The Requiem had been in hell, and she remembered. She'd been the pride of Earth's orbital defense fleet once. SDF 87. A Sol-class dreadnought with 6 plasma batteries, an armored keel, and a crew of 600. During the fall, she was caught in the Vesta crossfire, swarmed, boarded, bleeding out in space while her people fought tooth and nail, room by room, corridor by corridor. They fought until there was no one left to fight. The AI locked down the bridge. Her name was Seraph. She sealed the doors, flooded the lower decks, vented the reactor, and waited. I found her 20 years later, floating like a corpse in a debris field around a shattered moon. Half her spine missing, lights dead, hull split wide, no life signs, except one. Seraph had survived. Barely. I rebuilt her with scrap, with code salvaged from derelicts and half-corrupted Earth servers. Gave her a body again. She gave me a home. But the others, they never left. I heard them again as I passed the memorial wall. 600 names carved in scorched titanium, running floor to ceiling in the central corridor outside the engine room. Every time I walked past, Something whispered. Faint. Unmistakable. He's not coming back. Hold the line. I see them. Deck 3. Deck 3. I froze. Seraph? I whispered. You running echoes again? Negative, she replied instantly. No audio playback. All systems nominal. I sighed, rubbed my eyes. I didn't mean system echoes. A pause. I am not responsible for what you perceive, Commander. Yeah, that was her polite way of saying you're hearing ghosts, Cade. Again, I moved on, deeper into the belly of the ship. The lights dimmed as I reached the core chamber. The warcry cube still pulsed in the console, its golden lines glowing like blood vessels. I could feel it, even from across the room, like it was alive, or remembering. Later, I sat in the mess, chewing on a nutrient bar that tasted like cardboard in shame. The overhead lights flickered in rhythm with the storm outside. I stared at nothing, let the hum of the ship fill my ears. Then I heard footsteps, not boots, not mine, soft, rhythmic, familiar. I turned my head slowly. A figure stood in the doorway, worn combat armor, helmet under one arm, red stripe on her sleeve. Captain Alara Gray, dead for 23 years. She didn't speak, just looked at me with calm, judgmental eyes. I blinked. Gone. I stood up fast enough to knock over my chair. Seraph, I snapped. Visual confirmation, Section B6. Anyone aboard? Negative, she answered. No secondary life signs detected. I stared at the empty corridor for a long moment, heart thudding like a drum. Maybe I was cracking, or maybe the Requiem still remembered her captain. We got a ping 3 hours later. Encrypted, human code, unregistered vessel entering outer perimeter, Seraph announced. IFF tag matched. It's her, Nova. I rushed to the hangar bay, sealed my helmet, and stood at the airlock as the docking clamps engaged. The door hissed open with a puff of stale air, and there she was, bleeding, limping, one eye swollen shut, but alive. Nova stepped out of her battered Zerkel hybrid craft like she owned the place. Nice rust bucket, she said hoarsely. Welcome back. You got booze? She asked, voice dry. I've got boot polish and antifreeze. Pick your poison. She grinned. God, she looked like hell. Her armored bodysuit was scorched. One shoulder had been replaced with raw metal plating, welded into her collarbone. Her fingers sparked as she flexed them, artificial tendons whining softly. They'd done more experiments on her, but she got out. Because she's Nova. Because she's Fury incarnate. I reached out to help her, but she slapped my hand away. I'm not broken, she muttered. No, just angry. Damn right. She limped down the corridor like it was her own ship. Didn't ask where to go. She remembered. The ghosts didn't speak this time. I think they were watching. In the med bay, Seraph activated the last working biopod. Nova stared at the stasis chair like it was a torture device. Don't like the machines, she muttered. You are part machine, I reminded her. Doesn't mean I want one poking around inside me. Suit yourself. She finally sat. As the scanner hummed to life, she glanced at me. You still have that warcry thing? I nodded. It's active, playing through the ship. She closed her eyes. I heard it out there. When I escaped, even the Zerkel were reacting, twitching, shaking. One of them screamed. They don't scream. They do now. Later that night, she joined me on the bridge. No words for a while. Just two survivors watching stars drift by. Then she said quietly, I want revenge. So do I. I want to burn their memories. Then help me write new ones. She looked at me, tired but burning inside. What's the plan? We spread the scream. Make it echo through every dark place they built. Wake up the rest of us. The broken ones, the lost, and the ghosts. They'll help us. She smiled. Good. Let's give him hell. The Requiem rumbled beneath our feet, and somewhere in the walls, I swear I heard the captain whisper, light it up. You can tell a lot about a person by the way they fight. Some fight to win, some to survive, and some fight because there's a fire inside them that won't go out until the stars burn black. Nova was the third kind. We found the mining colony on the fringe of the Gullnex belt. No name, no flag, just a hollowed-out asteroid with a chain of atmosphere processors clinging to it like tumors. Zerkel had retrofitted it into a prison lab, the kind they don't log, the kind they don't admit exists. It wasn't in any registry, but Seraph picked up an automated distress pulse buried in the static. Old Earth code. Scrambled. Weak. We decrypted it. 2 words repeated over and over. Help us. That's all I needed. I prepped the assault gear in silence. Reinforced chest plate, dual-charged gauntlets, EMP blades strapped to my back. My helmet clicked into place with a hiss. The Requiem's hangar doors peeled open, revealing the silent black beyond. Nova stood beside me, arm flexing, the metal grafts on her shoulders sparking slightly. Her new implants weren't stable, grown under duress during her escape from Zerkel hands. I'd offered to help stabilize them. She declined. I like the edge, she said. Makes me feel real. Suit yourself. I muttered, stepping onto the drop skiff. She followed, shotgun magnetized to her spine, eyes scanning the black like a predator sniffing for blood. We descended into hell. The outer defenses were weak. That told me two things. They didn't expect visitors, and they didn't expect survivors to leave. Perfect. The skiff drifted past mining arms, rusted cranes, and shattered hulls fused into the asteroid's surface like rotting teeth. The main gate was sealed. Nova didn't wait. She jumped out mid-drift, landed on the wall with magnetic boots, and slapped an overcharged core to the gate's lock. The explosion was beautiful. The scream of metal, the hiss of decompressing air, the whimper of something not quite human behind the walls. We went in loud. The first corridor reeked of chemicals, antiseptic, and blood. Lights flickered above vats of green fluid. Inside them, bodies. Some human, some not, some halfway between. I moved fast, slicing through the nearest Zerkel with a flash of my blade. Their exoskeleton cracked like glass under pressure. The one behind him didn't get the chance to raise his weapon. Nova had already put a slug through his brainstem. We cleared the upper levels with ruthless precision. The guards fell one by one, twitching, shrieking, some clutching their heads. The war cry was playing in the comms channels again. Seraph had synced it through the Dominion's low-bandwidth frequencies. They heard it inside their heads now. The rage, the fire, the human sound, and they didn't know how to shut it out. We breached the central lab. That's when we found her. She couldn't have been older than 10. Hair patchy, skin pale and translucent under the lab lights. Tubes ran from her spine into a glowing containment unit behind her. Her eyes opened slowly as we entered. One green, one glowing blue. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. Nova froze. I know that tech, she whispered. They're growing psychic amplifiers. Weapons. This one's a prototype. I stepped forward cautiously. What's your name? The girl stared at me blankly. Behind her, the containment unit sparked. Seraph's voice crackled through my comm. Energy spike detected. Neural field unstable. I said, what's your name? Her lips parted. Then her voice hit me. Not through my ears, but through my skull. Ash. A whisper. A scream. A memory made of fire. The walls trembled. Alarms screamed to life. They knew we were here. Nova yanked the tubes out of the girl's back with a curse. Ash didn't flinch, just stepped forward, eyes glowing brighter. I picked her up, too light, bones too brittle, and bolted toward the exit. Nova followed, covering our rear as plasma bolts lanced past us. One burned a chunk off my shoulder plate. I kept running. The elevators were sealed. I punched the wall. Nova hit the override. Plan B, she growled. Always. We blew the wall. We made it to the skiff just as the whole lab section began to collapse. Ash didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stared at the sky like it was a puzzle she'd forgotten how to solve. The moment we cleared orbit, Seraph opened comms. You have a child, she stated. Yeah, I muttered, panting. Weird day. I am detecting irregular biosignatures. She's not entirely stable. I know. We'll fix it. You may not be able to. Nova sat down across from me, blood dripping from a cut on her cheek. She's one of us, she said flatly. I looked at Ash, eyes closed, hands clenched, like she was holding back a scream. Back on the Requiem, we ran scans. Her neural activity was off the charts. Not like a telepath, more like an amplifier. She could reflect emotion back at you, echo it, twist it. Seraph ran simulations. She's a living resonance chamber, she said. They were building her to turn human emotion into a weapon. Did it work? I asked. Seraph hesitated. She's already broadcasting. That night, I woke up sweating. Screams filled the ship, not over the speakers. Inside my head, the bridge lights were flickering red. Emergency klaxons were silent. Seraph was offline. I grabbed my weapon, bolted toward the control deck. Nova was already there, eyes wide, gun drawn. Ash is awake, she said. I entered the chamber. Ash sat on the floor, surrounded by floating debris, tools, datapads, even a chair spinning slowly around her. Her eyes were burning blue. The cube, our war cry, was pulsing brighter than I'd ever seen. She looked at me, and then I saw it. Not her, her memories. She'd been born in a vat, watched from above by glass-eyed scientists, and clicking insectoids. Prodded, shocked, calibrated, fed artificial thoughts, given fragments of human memories to amplify grief, pain, rage. No warmth, no touch, just fire. She was built to be our echo, but she didn't want to be a weapon. She wanted to feel. And then she saw us. Nova, me, the war cry. The debris dropped. The light faded. Ash fell forward, unconscious. Nova caught her. I called Seraph back online. Are we safe? For now, the AI answered. But that girl is not just a child. She's a fuse, and you've just lit her. We spent the next hours reinforcing the psychic dampeners in the ship's walls. Seraph rerouted most of the core's energy to neural stabilizers. Ash slept, occasionally twitched, once muttered something in an ancient Earth dialect none of us could translate. Nova sat beside her the whole time, arms crossed. You see it too, right? She said softly. See what? She's us. All our rage, all our pain, bottled, amplified, waiting to be aimed. You want to use her? No, she said. I want to protect her, because if they get her again, they win. I stood on the command deck again that night, looking out at the stars. The Zerkel thought they'd broken us, but we were still here. And now, we had fire. Living, breathing, unstable fire. The girl with the burning eyes was our mirror, our legacy. They built her to turn our screams into weapons. They forgot something. Humans don't need help being dangerous. We were born screaming. And now? Now we had a reason to scream louder. The first time I saw the Black Spire, I thought it was a wound in space. A jagged fortress carved into the upper atmosphere of Drone 8, suspended by massive grav hooks and tethered to an artificial storm cloud that never dissipated. It looked like it had been ripped from the bones of a god. Vertical and cruel, black stone fused with Zerkel biotech, glowing veins of blue plasma pulsing through it like blood. They called it a research archive. I called it a prison, because that's what it was. For humans, for memories, for truth. The Dominion stored stolen artifacts there, recordings, DNA strands, battle logs, history, and those they couldn't kill but couldn't let go. Nova sat next to me in the skiff, legs up, tuning her shotgun. Across from us, Ash slept with her head in my lap, unconscious but twitching again. Every now and then, her hands flexed like she was gripping something invisible. She'd been unstable since the last mission, but she'd also been aware. You sure about this? Nova asked. I looked down at Ash. No, I said, but it's not about being sure. It's about being right. Seraph's voice buzzed over the comms. Approaching the drop point. Outer anti-orbit sensors disabled for 43 seconds. This is your window. Copy that. I replied. We breach. We recover the intel. And we torch the tower. Noted. I recommend caution. When have we ever tried that? We descended fast, punching through the upper cloud layers like meteors. Lightning danced around us. The skiff's hull groaned under the pressure, but Seraph's stealth shielding held. The Black Spire loomed before us, alien and ancient. The outer walls shimmered with kinetic barriers. We couldn't blast our way through, so we went under. A supply shaft at the base of the tower was our way in, 1 meter wide, half submerged in coolant runoff. We landed in it like rats crawling through a drain pipe, clinging to the sides. Nova went first. I followed with Ash slung across my back, her small frame swaying with every movement. She whispered once, "Burn it." I almost dropped her. Inside, it was worse than I expected. The walls were covered in organic mesh, pulsing like muscle tissue. Zerkel drones floated down long corridors lit in purple haze, clicking and chittering to one another. Every door was sealed with biolocks keyed to their brainwave frequency. That's where Ash came in. When we reached the inner gate, I set her down. She opened her eyes slowly. You okay? I asked. She looked up. They're listening. To what? She didn't answer, just reached out and touched the gate. It hissed open. Nova and I exchanged a look. You know, for a kid, she's terrifying, Nova muttered. She's not a kid, I whispered. She's a mirror. We moved quickly through the lower archive levels, disabling patrols silently. Nova with her shock blade, me with a silenced flechette pistol. The Black Spire wasn't a war fortress. It was a vault, but it was still guarded by elite telepaths, Zerkel thinkers bred for data retention and psychological warfare. And they knew we were coming. At level 6, the lights turned red. They're on to us, Nova said, pressing her back to the wall. Ash was shivering, not from fear, from focus. They're afraid, she whispered. Of us? I asked. No. Of me. The data core chamber was massive, suspended in a vertical shaft, hundreds of meters deep, with thousands of glowing capsules lining the walls. Each held fragments of human memory, intercepted transmissions, death logs, dying declarations, rebel songs, final letters never sent. A museum of extinction. Ash stood at the edge of the drop and stared at it all. They stole our voices, she said. Nova stepped beside her. Then let's steal them back. I activated the spike. Seraph, start the siphon. Confirmed, the AI replied. This will take approximately 4 minutes. Make it 2. We're not staying long. The first wave came from the upper corridor, 4 drones and a thinker. The drones opened fire with pulse beams, cutting through metal and floor plating. I dove behind a pillar, fired 3 rounds into their sensor clusters, and ducked again as the thinker launched a psychic shockwave. Nova took the brunt of it, screaming, staggering, bleeding from one eye. Ash stood in the open, unmoving. Get back, I shouted. She didn't. Instead, she raised her hands, and the thinker stopped mid-cast. His limbs twitched, then, violently, bent backward. Bones snapped. The drones dropped their weapons. One began weeping, actually weeping. Ash walked forward, voice low. Feel what you made me feel. And then silence. When it was over, they were all dead. Nova got up slowly, wincing. Remind me to never piss her off. I didn't say anything, because I wasn't sure I was watching a little girl anymore. The siphon hit 100%. The cube in my hand pulsed, filled with voices, screams, memories, truth. I strapped it to my armor and turned to run. But Ash didn't move. She stared at the core shaft. They're still here, she said. Who? She pointed. Then I saw it. One of the capsules was still active. Inside it, a man. Human. Older. Frozen in cryostasis. His name on the plate. LT. Callus Reeve. I knew the name. He was the last commander of the Earth Resistance before the fall. A ghost. Seraph. I called. How is this possible? Unknown, she replied. But the readings are clear. That's him. He's been here this whole time. Yes. Held in dormant cognitive loop. Likely harvested for strategic memory patterns. Nova stepped forward. Can we get him out? I looked at Ash. She didn't say anything, just touched the glass. The pod hissed, and Reeve gasped back to life. The extraction was chaos. We carried Reeve between us, blasting our way through the ascending levels as alarms blared. More drones, more thinkers. I lost count of the bodies. I was moving on instinct. Reload, fire, cover Nova, shield Ash. Ash was glowing now, her skin lit from within, her footsteps cracking the floor. She was humming the war cry, no projecting it. Every corridor we entered, Zerkel dropped their weapons. Some screamed, others convulsed. They weren't just hearing it, they were feeling it. Regret, guilt, fear. Everything we buried was now their burden. She made them carry it. We reached the hangar just as Seraph breached the atmosphere in the Requiem. Cannon blasts tore through the outer defenses. The Requiem's hull shone red-hot from friction, lights blazing like an avenging angel. We jumped. The skiff latched to the side. We made it, barely. Back on board. I sat in the med bay, armor half off, blood soaking through my side. Reeve was in a stasis chair, alive, disoriented. Nova watched Ash sleep in the recovery room, arms folded. She's different, she said softly. She's us, I replied, but turned into a weapon. Nova looked at me. Do we still call this a rescue? I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure anymore. Later that night, I walked into the bridge and stared out at the stars. Behind me, Reeve's voice cut through the silence. They thought they could erase us, he said. They always do, I murmured. He stood beside me. His face was older than the photos, harder, scarred, but his eyes were the same. They tried to take our voice, he said. But now they're listening. The war is coming. Not just raids, not just resistance. A war of memory, of soul, of fire. The black spire burned behind us, a dying scream frozen in time. And somewhere deep in space, a hive mind trembled, because the humans were singing again. And this time, it wasn't a song of surrender. It was a war cry that there's a moment, right before a storm breaks, when everything holds its breath. The air grows still, the world waits, and then it explodes. That's where we were now, on the edge, waiting for thunder. The name Callus Reeve was enough to stir old blood from cryosleep. When I transmitted his survival across the old rebel beacon frequencies, half a dozen dead channels flared to life. Hidden colonies, pirate cells, deserted Terra bunkers. They all blinked back. For the first time in decades, they believed humanity might still have a future. A burning, angry one. We weren't just survivors anymore. We were dangerous again. Where's the map? Reeve asked as he limped into the Requiem's war room. He was recovering faster than I expected. His body was weak, but his mind? Sharp as ever, like a blade honed by loss. Here, I said, gesturing to the projected starfield. 4 nodes, all human colonies under Zerkel protection. Slaves, memory mines, indoctrination camps. Reeve stared at them, his jaw clenched. We hit all 4, one at a time. Whisper raids, no big explosions. He turned to look at me. You want them to notice us? I grinned. No. I want them to chase us. We started with Thalos Reach, a mining colony buried beneath methane storms. The Zerkel used it as a memory refinery, extracting emotion from human prisoners and converting it into psychoreactive fuel. We dropped in silent. Nova disabled the perimeter nodes. I led the infiltration team. Reeve coordinated from the Requiem. Ash stayed behind. I told her to rest. She didn't argue, but she watched us leave with those glowing eyes, quiet, calculating. Inside Thalos, the air was thick with synthetic fog. The workers moved like ghosts, pale and slow. They weren't drugged. They were drained. Every corridor echoed with distant humming. Machines harvested human grief, piped it into crystalline tanks, bottled sorrow, manufactured despair. It made my skin crawl. Nova and I reached the central relay. She planted the charges. I opened the intercom. Attention, this is a message to every soul still breathing. You've been silenced, buried, broken. Not anymore. I activated the cube. The war cry surged through the system. It wasn't just sound. It was remembrance. Screams of dying captains. Laughter from childhood stolen. The thunder of boots on Earth's last battlefield. And it cracked the colony wide open. The prisoners awoke like a storm. One by one, they screamed. Not in fear, but fury. They tore down guards with their bare hands, smashed memory pumps, set fire to the labs. Nova covered the escape routes, moving like lightning, leaving bodies in her wake. I stayed at the heart, watching it unfold, watching humans remember. By the time we left, Thalos Reach wasn't a mine anymore. It was a furnace, and its fire would spread. Back on the Requiem, Ash met us at the hangar. She didn't speak, but something about her felt heavier, denser, like the girl was slowly being swallowed by something deeper. You heard it, she said quietly. Didn't you? The scream? I replied, no. Them. I hesitated, then nodded, because she was right. We weren't just waking humans. We were disturbing the Zerkel, stirring their hive mind, creating ripples, and they were starting to notice. 2 more missions followed. We freed a shipyard colony in orbit of Eta Prime, converting their dock workers into rebel engineers. We crashed the indoctrination relay on Sector Arden 6, hijacking a Dominion propaganda loop and replacing it with the war cry for 73 hours straight. Each time, more people joined us. Some old, some broken, some half-dead and burning for revenge. They called us a myth. Then they saw Reeve, and myth became movement. But every fire draws smoke, and smoke brings storms. It came at Kovari Station, the last colony on our list. We thought it would be simple. In and out, light the flame, extract the prisoners, fade into the stars. But we were wrong, because Kovari was waiting for us. The trap sprung the moment we breached atmosphere. Missiles screamed through the clouds. Seraph took a hit to the dorsal thrusters. The Requiem spun violently, shedding hull plates like feathers. Reeve shouted over the comms. We've been compromised. Full deployment. Go loud. Nova and I hit the ground with the strike team. Ash followed. I told her to stay. She didn't listen. Kovari was hell. Burning skies, collapsing towers, screams through shattered windows. The Zerkel had deployed elite silencer units, heavily armored, psi-shielded, built to resist psychic influence. But Ash walked straight into them. She didn't fight with fists. She didn't scream. She projected raw memory. She tore open their minds and made them relive Earth's final day. I watched one silencer fall to his knees, clawing at his helmet, sobbing like a child. The others fled. Nova and I covered the flanks, fighting toward the main tower where they held over 500 humans in cryostasis, slated for emotion stripping. We breached the vault. The air inside smelled like dust and dreams. I called it in. Seraph, we have them. Begin evac. Negative, Seraph replied. I'm pinned. 3 enemy cruisers inbound. I cannot extract without assistance. Reeves' voice cut in. Reroute power. I'll take the helm. You're not cleared for. I built the override protocols. Seraph. Confirmed. Command transferred. I felt the ship lurch through the sky above us, blazing like a wounded beast. Reeve was flying her himself. We activated the cryo-release. One by one, the humans inside began to breathe again. I looked around that room, faces pale and blank, eyes slowly fluttering open, and I realized something. We weren't just rescuing people. We were rebuilding a species. Ash moved among them like a ghost. She didn't speak, but they stared at her with awe. Some reached out. One old woman whispered, "Angel." Ash just stared at the ceiling, then said, softly, "They're coming." The sky lit up. The Zerkel flagship dropped out of warp, bigger than anything I'd ever seen. Thousands of tendrils. A neural relay array so wide it cast a shadow on the planet. Reeve shouted, "I can't hold them." I turned to Nova. Options. She checked her mag. One left. Good enough. We sealed the chamber and sent the evac signal. Then we ran straight into the fire. The final stand at Kovari was madness. 3 of us, against a battalion. But we didn't fight alone, because the people we woke, they fought too. With fists, with fury, with rage that had been frozen for years. The colony turned into a riot of fire and blood. And through it all, Ash stood in the open, eyes glowing like suns. She screamed, but it wasn't fear. It was command. And for the first time, the Zerkel broke formation. The Requiem descended in a hail of cannon fire. Seraph's voice cut through the smoke. Board now or die. We dragged Ash into the hangar as the last of the evac pods locked into place. The moment we cleared orbit, the sky behind us turned to flame. Kovari burned, but the people were free. Back on the bridge, Reeve collapsed into the command chair. Nova leaned against the wall, blood on her knuckles. Ash stood in the center of the room, staring at the starfield. "They're scared," she whispered. "The Zerkel." She nodded. "They don't understand us. They thought we'd fade, thought we'd forget." She turned to me. "They didn't know what happens when a match hits dry kindling." I looked at her, at Nova, at Reeve, at the crew of the Requiem. All rebels, ghosts, fireborn. And I smiled, because the storm had finally broken, and it was ours. There's a saying among the survivors: the Hive forgets nothing. It only waits. We used to think the Zerkel were cold, unfeeling, machines and exoskeletons, bred for conquest and order. But that's not true. They feel. And now they were feeling something new. Fear. I was in the command chamber of the Pale Requiem, watching Ash through the reinforced glass of the observation deck. She sat cross-legged, hands on her knees, breathing slow and even. The lights dimmed around her, not by design, but because she drained power just by being. She'd barely spoken since Kovari. Not from trauma, from focus. Reeve stood beside me, arms crossed. "How long has she been like that?" "For hours," I said. "Maybe longer." "Is it safe?" "No." "Then why aren't you stopping her?" I looked at him. "Because she's listening." "To what?" "To them." The Hive was stirring. Seraph had picked up signal distortions along the galactic fringe, patterns in neural space, psychic pulses too complex for even her to decrypt. But Ash could, and she wasn't just intercepting them. She was translating. Nova walked in, tossing her rifle onto the floor, blood spattered across her face. "We just intercepted a Zerkel sleeper ship," she said. "One of ours. They took it a year ago. Reprogrammed the crew." "Survivors?" I asked. "One." He said they were building a new Hive branch. Not military. Memory-based. A central processor. Reeve went still. "A weapon?" Nova shook her head. "No. A library. But alive. They're trying to catalog everything we are, every scream, every resistance, every word we ever shouted into the void. They want to understand us," I muttered. Reeve stepped forward, jaw clenched. "No. They want to contain us." That's when Ash spoke. She didn't open her eyes. She just whispered, "They remember Earth." We all turned. Her voice was calm, cold, alien, and familiar. "They remember the soil, the fire, the last heartbeat of soul. They remember dying." Nova's eyes narrowed. "What the hell is she talking about?" Ash looked up. "They weren't always our enemy." And just like that, everything tilted. She brought us into the core chamber. The cube, the war cry, sat on its pedestal, pulsing gently. Ash reached for it. I almost stopped her. Then she pressed her palm against it. And suddenly, we saw. It wasn't a memory. It was a translation of something ancient, raw. From the Hive's perspective, images flashed behind my eyes, swarms drifting in the void, searching for meaning. not conquest, curiosity. They came to Earth not as invaders, but as observers. We attacked first. Maybe we had reason, maybe not. But that first scream, human, furious, defiant, echoed in them like a virus. It didn't kill them. It changed them, made them feel, and they didn't know how to cope. So they adapted, violently. Ash staggered back, gasping. Nova caught her. Reeve looked shaken. Are you telling me we created them? Ash nodded weakly. Not their bodies, not their ships, but who they are now. The rage, the fear, the obsession with memory and control. That's us. We stood in silence. The war, it seemed, hadn't just been one of weapons or domination. It had been existential. The Hive became monsters because they couldn't become us. And now, they were trying to rewrite their own identity by dissecting ours. The next day, the call came. A coded signal from deep within the Lyran expanse. Ancient Earth encryption, rotating cipher keys that hadn't been used since the fall. Seraph struggled to break it. Ash didn't. She translated it in seconds. One word. Parliament. Nova frowned. What the hell is that? I felt my stomach twist. Earth's last archive. The hidden one. We always thought it was destroyed in the orbital bombardment. But if someone's still alive in there, Reeve stepped forward, then they've got the last clean record of who we were. And the Hive wants it, I said. Ash nodded. They're sending their mind tender. That made Seraph pause. I am unfamiliar with that designation. Because it doesn't exist in your records, Ash said softly. It's not a soldier, not a leader. It's the one who curates identity, the one who remembers, the last ancient mind of the Hive. It's awake. Nova drew her blade. So we kill it. Ash looked at her with an expression I didn't recognize. It wasn't fear. It was sorrow. You don't kill memories, she said. You burn them. We set course for Lyran. The Requiem moved like a ghost through ion storms and dead zones. All around us, the Hive buzzed. Ships shifted course. Telepathic noise filled the void. They weren't chasing us anymore. They were calling to us. I spent that night walking the lower decks, past the old names etched into the wall, past the sealed doors of cryopods we hadn't yet opened, past ghosts. When I reached the observation deck, Ash was already there. She stared at the stars, skin dimly glowing. Do you remember your parents? I asked. She shook her head. They gave me memory fragments. Happy ones, but I knew they were false. I could feel the edges where the lie stopped. Do you want real ones? She turned to me. You're giving me real ones. Every scream, every fire, every time we say no. I smiled just a little. You're more human than you know. She looked away. I'm more than human, and less. Seraph called us to the bridge. We were approaching Lyran, but something was wrong. The space around the planet was still. Too still. No movement. No signals. The moment we entered orbit, Seraph's voice dropped an octave. I can feel it. Nova looked up. I am an AI, but my source code evolved under Earth's emotional net protocols. I feel in limited ways. And right now, I am terrified. That's when the mind tender appeared. It didn't arrive in a ship. It was the ship. A massive living construct unfolded from the shadow of Lyran's moon, like a squid made of glass and thought, with eyes like black holes. It didn't fire weapons. It broadcast straight into our skulls. My knees buckled. Nova screamed. Reeve clutched the rail like the deck was tilting. Only Ash stood still, eyes glowing, lips parting, and she answered. It wasn't words. It was raw memory. Her pain, her rage, her longing. She flung it at the mind tender like a spear. And for a moment, the Hive reeled. The construct pulsed, shifted, and then it spoke. In my voice, in Nova's, in my mother's, in my old commander's. It spoke in every voice we'd ever lost. You are echoes, fractured, unwhole. Let us shape you. Let us end the fracture. Ash stepped forward, and she screamed. A single word. No. The mind tender collapsed part of itself, twisting backward like it had been hit by a nova. The stars behind it dimmed. We fired everything we had. Reeve launched Requiem's plasma lances. Nova dumped every missile in the hold. I activated the cube, unleashing the scream across every band of communication. The Hive wailed, and for the first time, it ran. Afterward, we drifted in silence. The mind tender was gone. Lyran was quiet. Below us, the last Earth archive blinked online, reactivated by Ash's pulse. Inside were names, voices, memories, proof that we existed, that we mattered, that we fought. And now, the Hive remembered, too, not just who we were, but what we could become. I stood on the bridge, Nova to my right, Reeve to my left, Ash in front, glowing like a small, quiet sun. We had started a fire, and the Hive would never forget it. Not now, not ever. The thing about war is, it always gets personal. The moment you start fighting for survival, it shifts. No longer about strategy or tactics. It's about who you are, who you were, and how far you're willing to go to stay human. But the hardest part? When the other side learns how to feel the way you do. I woke up to silence. Not the usual hum of the Requiem's engines. Not the familiar noise of the crew running drills or tinkering with weapon systems. This was deeper, the kind of silence that settles in the bones and makes your skin crawl, like the universe is holding its breath. I stood on the bridge, looking out at the empty expanse of space. Something was wrong. Seraph had gone offline for nearly an hour, and when she returned, her voice was cold, almost broken. "It's happening," she said. The tension in the air thickened. Lyran, the last Earth archive, hidden beneath the remnants of a long-dead planet. It should have been a victory for us, a symbol of hope, the proof we needed to show humanity's strength. Instead, it had become a trigger. The Hive had learned to feel what we felt, to understand the core of our resistance, the rage that ran in our blood. And with it came a terrible realization. They weren't just fighting us for control anymore. They were fighting for something else. They were fighting for their own identity. I found Ash in the lower hold, sitting cross-legged, her fingers lightly grazing the surface of the Warcry cube. The faint blue glow from the artifact bathed her in a strange, eerie light. "Ash," I called softly, my voice cutting through the quiet. She didn't look up. Her eyes, usually glowing faintly, were flickering with an intensity one had never seen before. Her mind was somewhere else, deeper than I'd ever imagined. "They're coming for us," she whispered. "The Hive. They're not just trying to stop us. They're trying to erase us. Every fragment of us." I stepped forward, instinctively reaching out to her. "What do you mean?" Her gaze lifted, her eyes meeting mine, crystal clear, unblinking. "They've discovered something. A weakness in the Warcry. Something they can use against us." "What?" "They don't just control memories. They control time. The way things unfold. They can rewrite the past if they want to. We thought we could stop them by reclaiming the past. But what if they can erase it?" I felt a chill crawl up my spine. The Hive had always been calculating, mechanical. But this was different. They were becoming something else. Something we had never anticipated. Reeve joined us on the bridge a few minutes later, his face grim, his posture rigid. "Seraph's picked up new readings," he said, his voice low. "They're deploying more advanced tech. Something hybrid. It's not just psychic weapons. It's like they're using fragments of our own memories against us." "They can't," I said firmly. "We control the Warcry." Ash shook her head, her eyes never leaving the cube. "It's not the Warcry they're after anymore. It's our identity, and we've already given it to them." The bridge became a flurry of activity as Seraph's voice echoed in the comms. "Enemy fleet detected," she announced. "At least 5 ships, bearing down on our position. They're not attacking. They're waiting." "What are they waiting for?" Nova asked, walking in from the side. Her face was a mask of bloodlust and exhaustion. "Something's wrong," Seraph said. "They're amplifying their signals. Whatever they've learned from Ash's translation, they're using it to create a psychic blackout." "That's not good," I muttered. "We need to move now." Reeve's eyes narrowed. "No, we don't move anymore. We face them." I didn't agree with him at first, but the truth was, we couldn't outrun this. Not anymore. Ash had stopped speaking. She had moved to the command center, standing still as if waiting for something to happen. I could feel the pressure building around her like a storm front. The space inside the Requiem felt thinner, colder, as though reality itself was starting to crack at the edges. "Ash," I asked cautiously. Her response came in a soft, almost inaudible whisper. "They're not just coming for us. They're coming for the truth." I didn't know what she meant, but I didn't need to. The Hive had become more than just our enemy. They were trying to erase everything that had made us who we were. The memories, the pain, the hope. They wanted to reshape history itself. And the Requiem was the last thing standing between them and their goal. It wasn't long before the first blast hit. A pulse wave of pure psychic energy, cutting through the Requiem's shields like a hot knife through butter. The ship shuddered, the lights flickering. "What the hell was that?" Nova shouted. "A breach in the hull," Reeve replied. "They've penetrated the outer layers. Prepare for impact," Seraph warned. I felt the entire ship convulse as another strike slammed us from above. The engine sputtered. The deck dropped beneath my feet. A scream erupted from the corridor, followed by the sounds of running footsteps and the shrill wail of an alarm. We scrambled to the nearest weapons bay. Nova, take point, I ordered, adrenaline coursing through me. Reeve, you're with me. Ash, stay here. No, she said sharply. I'm coming. You're not ready for. I am ready, she interrupted, her voice cold. I met her gaze. The fire in her eyes was different now. It wasn't just rage. It was something more, something that reached into the very heart of the hive itself. I can't let you go alone, she said softly. Not anymore. We moved as one, making our way through the crumbling halls of the Requiem. The ship was fighting against the breach, but it wasn't fast enough. We were losing the battle. By the time we reached the forward command deck, the hive was already inside. There were no soldiers, no drones, just shadows. They didn't need a physical army to defeat us. They had become an army. The air was thick with their presence, a psychic pressure that gnawed at the edges of my consciousness. It wasn't like before, where their thoughts were distant, calculated. Now, it was personal, close. They had tapped into something we couldn't see. I felt them reaching for me. Ash stepped forward, her body glowing with a faint blue aura. Her hands lifted as if she were gathering something from the air. The shadows recoiled. I watched as the hive, their mind, struggled against the force she was unleashing. The air shimmered with energy. The ship's systems crackled in protest. Then, something snapped. The hive's true weapon wasn't their fleets. It wasn't their soldiers. It was their mind. And Ash had just broken it. The mind tender, that massive, ancient entity we'd fought before, appeared in front of us. But it was different now. Instead of a towering, mechanical beast, it was smaller, fragile, almost human. The core of the hive. The collective memories of every Zerkel that had ever lived, condensed into one living, breathing entity. I could feel it inside my head, the fear, the panic, the overwhelming realization that they had failed. Ash reached out, and the mind tender shuddered. It spoke, its voice fractured, broken. You will be forgotten. Ash's voice was calm, but her words carried weight. No, we remember. You'll never forget us. In that moment, I saw it. The hive's fall, not in a battle, not in a clash of weapons, but in the silence. They didn't know how to fight against what they had become. And Ash, she was their undoing. The mind tender collapsed into itself, its form dissolving into dust and light. The psychic pressure lifted. The hive's hold over us shattered like glass. But it wasn't over. We had just won a battle. The war was far from finished. We stood in the wreckage of the Requiem, staring out at the stars. We'll fight, I said quietly, and we'll win. Ash looked up at me, her glowing eyes softer now, calmer. I remember, she whispered, and they never will. The first time you truly face the cost of war is when you realize that survival isn't a victory. It's a debt, and every breath you take afterward is just another payment. The hive was wounded. We knew that much, but wounds fester, and the pain always comes back, sharper and more dangerous. It didn't take long for us to realize. They weren't retreating. They were regrouping. And when they came back, they wouldn't come as invaders. They'd come as hunters. We floated in the wreckage of the Requiem, picking up the pieces. The ship wasn't a sanctuary anymore. It was a tomb, its walls scorched, hull torn open, the sharp sting of electric hums cutting through the void. Life support was down. The central systems were half functional. Every room we passed had its own scar from the hive's last attack. The scars of a war we weren't ready for. But what else could we do? Run? Hide? No. We would stand. I found Nova in the lower deck, her hands wrapped in bandages. Her rifle lay against the wall, discarded in the corner. Nova, I said, walking over. How bad is it? She didn't answer right away. She just stared at the damage. It's not the ship that's broken, is it? I said quietly. Her eyes met mine. We're all broken, Captain. You saw what happened to the hive. They've realized they can't control us like they used to. I nodded. I'd felt it too. Ash had shattered their collective consciousness, like tearing apart the roots of a twisted tree, but the tree still stood. The hive wasn't finished. It was adapting, growing stronger. Then what do we do? I asked. We burn it all down. Ash had retreated to the observation deck, staring out at the stars as though they held the answers to questions I couldn't even put into words. I approached slowly, unsure of what to say. You know, I started, trying to break the silence. They're coming for us." She didn't look at me. "I know," she replied softly. "And they won't stop until they take us." I paused. "So what now?" She turned toward me then, her expression unreadable. Her eyes glowed faintly, that same eerie light that had become a symbol of both power and terror. "They'll take everything we are," she said, her voice steady but laced with a quiet intensity. "But they'll never take who we were. They can't." "And what if they try?" I asked, leaning against the doorway. Ash took a long breath, looking up at the stars. "Then we'll burn it all down. Everything we can. Make them remember why they fear us." Seraph's voice broke through the quiet. "Captain, we've intercepted a communication from the Hive." I snapped to attention. "Put it through," I ordered. The image that flickered onto the screen was nothing short of terrifying. A massive structure, shifting in and out of phase like a nightmare given form. It looked like a cloud of liquid metal and living stone. I could feel it pressing in on me, even through the ship's shields. "Is that the Hive?" Reva asked, stepping up beside me. "No," Ash whispered, her eyes wide with recognition. "That's their mind." The image shifted, and then there it was, something that made my blood run cold. The mind tender. It had returned, but now it was different. Instead of the fractured, shattered form we had faced before, it stood whole, towering over us like a god reborn. Its form pulsed with energy, more alive, more dangerous. And then, the voice. "You cannot escape." The war cry pulse, the one that had driven the Hive into retreat, was now muted, almost like it had been absorbed. Every psychic probe, every flicker of power that Ash could channel was now being met with a wall, an impermeable one. We were no longer fighting against soldiers. We were fighting against the Hive itself. "They've adapted," Reeve muttered, his gaze locked on the screen. "We knew they would. But this is something else. It's alive. They've merged their collective consciousness into one mind. A hybrid," I said, "more dangerous than ever." Nova clenched her fists. "We need to fight back, now, before they get any stronger." Ash stepped forward, her voice quiet. "They don't want to kill us anymore. They want to erase us. Our memories, our history, our humanity." I looked at her, trying to piece it together. "What are you suggesting, Ash?" "Fire," she said simply. "We burn the Hive before it can burn us." It wasn't a plan. It was a desperate gamble. But we had nothing left to lose. We gathered the crew in the war room. Tensions were high. The Hive's new form, their mind, had fractured our sense of security. The walls around us were closing in. But there was still one thing we had left. Our fight. "Ash," I began, my voice firm. "You felt their movements. You've connected with them. Can we predict where they'll strike next?" She hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor for a moment before she looked back up at me. "Yes, but it won't be easy. Their mind is too vast. Every thought, every emotion they've ever experienced is there. It's like trying to fight a storm." "Then we burn the storm," Nova said with a savage smile. "We give them something to fear." We gathered every weapon we had left, every ship, every plasma cannon, every missile, every last vestige of our humanity was pointed straight at the Hive. "Let's make them remember who we are," I said to the crew, standing tall in front of them. "We're not going to just fight them. We're going to show them why we're worth fighting for." The battle came quickly. The Hive's fleet surrounded us. Smaller ships, like deadly wasps, darting in and out of the shadows. Their weapons pulsed with psychic energy, each strike aimed at our minds, shattering our focus, leaving us vulnerable. But we fought back. We fought with everything we had. Plasma beams streaked through the sky. Missiles flared across the void, smashing into their ships, tearing them apart. And all the while, Ash stood at the center of it, her hands raised, pulling the war cry into every fiber of her being. She was a beacon. She was our flame. The battle raged for hours. We didn't stop. And just as we thought the tide was turning, the Hive's mind reached out. It wasn't a voice anymore. It was a presence, a pressure, like the weight of the universe bearing down on us. I felt it in my bones. It tried to take us, to break us, to rewrite our minds, our histories. It was everything we had fought against, all in one concentrated wave. I could feel my body trembling. But Ash didn't move. She raised her hands to the sky, and she screamed, not with her voice, not with words, but with every ounce of everything she was. Her body glowed with the energy of the war cry, a blazing inferno of pure, unyielding human spirit. The Hive's mind recoiled. I could feel it shudder, and then it broke. The explosion that followed was beyond anything I had ever witnessed. The Hive's fleet shattered. The mind tender howled. The mind that had once been unified was now splintering, fragmented like glass falling to the ground. The stars in front of us lit up like a supernova, and for a moment, I thought we had won. I thought the war was over. But then I saw the shadow. The mind tender was not dead. It had merely been displaced. We hadn't destroyed it. Not yet. Is it over? Reeve asked, his voice hoarse. Not yet. I replied, my heart pounding in my chest. But we've got one shot. Ash looked at me, and for the first time since we started this war, she smiled. We burn it down. Now, the silence after a battle is never truly silent. It's the kind of quiet that crawls under your skin and makes you question if the war is really over. The stars outside the Requiem's observation deck were still empty. The pulse of the engines, the hum of the core, it was all so much quieter now. We had pushed the Hive back. We had fractured their mind. We had broken their hold over the galaxy. But they weren't finished yet. I knew it. Ash knew it. And Reeve, well, he never gave up hope. Ash, I called into the shadowed corner of the ship. Her form was barely visible, kneeling on the floor in front of the Warcry cube. She didn't look up at the sound of my voice. She had been like this for days, silent, withdrawn, her body glowing faintly in the dim light. Her connection to the Hive had left its mark. It had pulled at her in ways that none of us fully understood. Ash, I said again, moving closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. She looked up at me then, her eyes as empty as the space outside the ship. They're coming. Again. We'll stop them, I replied, but I knew that words weren't enough. I knew we weren't ready. Ash's eyes flickered with something, an emotion, maybe, or just the weight of the war bearing down on her. It's not enough to fight them. It's never enough. We can't just break them. They'll rebuild. They always do. I knelt beside her, feeling the familiar chill in the air as her powers surged once more. Then we burned them down to the roots. For good. She didn't say anything more, but she didn't need to. The Requiem was on high alert. Seraph's voice echoed through the ship. Captain, we've detected an anomaly. Massive. The screens blinked to life, showing a mass of ships materializing out of the deep blackness of space. Hundreds, no, thousands, of Hive ships, coming at us from every direction. The Hive wasn't just retreating anymore. They were launching their final assault. We've got no time, Reeve growled, pacing across the war room. They're coming for the heart of the rebellion. If they destroy us here, we're done. Humanity's finished. We won't let them, I said, my voice hardening. Prepare for battle. Ash, are you? I'm ready, she interrupted, her voice strangely calm. But this won't be like the last time. This is different. The Hive has learned. They've adapted. We're going to have to face them head on, not just physically, but in their mind. The Requiem tore through the void, weapons primed, shields up. The massive fleet of Hive ships surrounded us like a flood, blotting out the stars. For the first time in this war, I felt real fear claw at my chest. They weren't just trying to erase us anymore. They were trying to break us. Every memory, every connection, every shred of who we were. They weren't going to just kill us. They were going to consume us. And if Ash was right, they were going to start with her. The first strike came from the largest Hive ship, a dark fortress that looked like a twisted star, its surface rippling with psychic energy. The ship fired a wave of concentrated neural radiation, cutting through the Requiem's shields like paper. Shields at 40%. Seraph shouted, "Get us out of here," I ordered, gripping the command chair. But the Requiem didn't respond. The Hive's attack was designed to cripple our systems, our engines, our weapons, our mind. I saw it before it hit. The mind tender. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a person. It was the Hive itself. Its consciousness made manifest, a tidal wave of psychic energy crashing against us. Ash fell to her knees, her hands pressed against her temples, her body racked with violent tremors. It's too much," she gasped, her voice breaking. "They're reaching inside me." I moved to her side, but Nova was already there, her hands steady as she helped her sit up. "Hold on, Ash," Nova said, her voice rough with concern. "We can get through this." But Ash's eyes were distant, unfocused. "I can't, it's in my head. I can hear them, feel them." The mind tender's presence surged through the Requiem, its voice reverberating in our minds, deep and penetrating. You have no future, humans. I felt my head pound as it spoke, as though the words were shaking my very thoughts. The voice of the hive was everywhere. Inside me, inside all of us. I gritted my teeth. We've survived worse, I said, even though I didn't know if I believed it. We'll survive this. Captain, we're not going to make it, Reeves said, his voice strained. We need to do something, and we need to do it now. Ash, he turned to her, desperation in his eyes. Ash, please, you have to fight back. You have to hold on. Ash's breathing was shallow. Her face was pale, and the glow in her eyes was flickering. I reached out to touch her arm, but she pulled away. They're inside me, she whispered, her voice barely audible. They want to pull me apart. Fight them, I urged. I don't know if I can. The mind tender's voice echoed again, but this time it wasn't just in our minds. It was in the very fabric of the ship. We are your end. I watched as Ash's body trembled harder, her hands clutching at the ground. I felt her connection to the hive, and I knew she wasn't just fighting them. She was fighting herself. Every fragment of her being, every piece of humanity she had left was being pulled in different directions, torn apart by the mind of the hive. Ash, Nova shouted, listen to me. You are more than them. You're not like them. You are human. Something in Ash's eyes flickered. Just a brief moment of clarity. I am human, she whispered, her voice trembling. The mind tender roared in fury, its psychic presence pressing down on us like 1,000 tons of weight. You cannot escape the hive, it bellowed. But Ash wasn't done yet. She clenched her fists, her body glowing brighter now, the pulse of the war cry surging from her with an intensity that lit up the entire ship. Her eyes burned like twin stars, and for the first time since the battle began, she stood tall. I choose who I am, she said, her voice booming in the void. With a single motion, Ash reached out, not with her hands, but with her mind. She pulled at the very essence of the hive, ripping its thoughts apart, shattering its unity. I am human, she cried, her voice breaking through the psychic noise. And then, like a thunderclap, everything stopped. The mind tender screamed in agony, its massive form breaking apart, fracturing into pieces. Its hold on the Requiem collapsed, the ship's systems suddenly coming back online as the psychic pressure lifted. We're still alive, I whispered, disbelief coloring my words. The Requiem had survived, but the war wasn't over. The battle raged on, but the hive's forces were scattered, weakened. Ash had broken their connection, but the war cry was no longer enough. We had to finish it, for good. Seraph turned to me, her expression grim. Captain, the hive's remaining fleet is retreating, but they're heading to the heart of the rebellion. If they reach that point, everything we've fought for will be lost. They won't reach it, I said, clenching my fists. We end it here. We set course for the heart of the hive's remaining forces. Ash remained silent beside me, her body still glowing with the remnants of the war cry. She was quiet, but I could feel the weight of everything she had done, everything she had given. The price of victory was still far too high. The final confrontation took place under the shadow of the hive's flagship, a massive, twisting leviathan of steel and thought. It was their last stand, and this time, we wouldn't let them win. We launched everything we had. Plasma cannons, missiles, the full force of the war cry, amplified by Ash's power. The hive fought back, but they were broken. Their mind was shattered. Their unity was gone, and we were human. The aftermath of war never looks the way you think it will. You imagine victory as a celebration. You picture the triumph, the cheers, the release of the burden, the moments where you stand tall, victorious, knowing that you've earned your peace. You think you'll find rest, that the scars will fade, that the memories will settle into something manageable. But no, the scars don't fade. And peace? Peace is just the calm before the next storm. The Requiem hung in space, its hull riddled with the remnants of our last battle. The hive was in retreat, broken, scattered, but not gone. We had fractured their mind, shattered their unity, and yet the truth was undeniable. They weren't finished, and neither were we. I stood at the observation deck, my eyes fixed on the stars. The vastness of space felt heavier now, like a weight pressing down on me. We had won. We had survived. But for what? The hive's remnants still loomed on the horizon, a shattered, broken empire that would rebuild, adapt, and strike again. And we were the survivors. But there was a cost to survival, one that couldn't be undone. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Nova. Her face was bruised, bloodied, but there was something in her eyes, something more than just the weariness of battle. Thinking about the future? She asked, stepping beside me. I didn't respond immediately. What was there to say? The future was a question I didn't know how to answer. What did it mean to be human after all this? Nova took a deep breath and leaned against the console. We did it, you know. We're alive. I met her gaze. Are we? She shrugged. It's all we can be for now. The crew had gathered in the war room. The heavy silence that hung in the air wasn't one of victory. It was the weight of exhaustion, of knowing that the fight was never really over. Ash stood at the far end of the room, her hands clasped behind her back. She hadn't said much since the final battle. Her connection to the Hive was still there, lingering in her mind, haunting her every thought. She had broken them, but in doing so, she had fractured something inside herself. Ash, I said, walking over to her. How are you holding up? She turned to face me, her eyes glowing faintly, but there was a distance there. I'm fine, she said, her voice cold and empty. We won, but the cost. I nodded, already knowing what she meant. The cost is everything. She smiled faintly, but there was no humor in it. It's not just us, Captain. The Hive is gone, but they left a scar, a mark on the galaxy, and now we're the ones who have to clean it up. I looked around the room, at the faces of the crew. We had done the impossible. We had survived, but the galaxy was still broken, and we were left to pick up the pieces. Seraph's voice broke through the silence, sharp and clear. Captain, we've detected something. I turned to her. What now? The Hive's remnants, she said, her voice steady. They're not retreating. They're reorganizing. We've detected their signal in several parts of the galaxy. It's not a full-on assault, but it's not over. They're rebuilding. I clenched my fists. So it's never over. No, Seraph replied. But it's different now. The Hive is splintered. Their unity is gone. They are scattered, each fragment trying to rebuild what was lost. They'll be a threat for a long time, but they won't come at us like they did before. They're weaker. Weak. Nova scoffed. We fought them once. We can do it again. But it won't be the same, Ash said softly. We're not the same. The war cry isn't enough to stop them now. They've adapted, but we've also changed. I looked at Ash. She was right. The Hive had learned. They had evolved, adapted, and they would keep coming. But so would we. Then what now? I asked, my voice tired but determined. We rebuild, Ash said, her eyes locking onto mine. We gather what's left. We forge our future, piece by piece. We fight for humanity's place in the galaxy. I turned to face the crew. They were the last of us. The few who had survived the war. The ones who had stood together, defied the odds, and held on until the very end. We may have shattered the Hive, I said, my voice steady. But the fight isn't over. This war has changed us. And now, it's time for us to change the galaxy. We rebuild. We take the fight to them. We show them that we are not their puppets. We are not their experiment. We are human. A murmur of agreement ran through the crew. They were with me. They had always been with me. Later, I stood alone in the command center, looking out at the stars. The Requiem was still intact, still our home, though it felt like a relic now. The world we had known was gone. The war had taken everything from us. Our homes, our families, our history, but it hadn't taken our will. Ash joined me, standing beside me in silence for a long moment. You know, she said softly, the Hive might never be fully gone. They will always be a shadow on the horizon. I know, I replied, my eyes fixed on the stars. But we'll be the ones to bring the light. They've tried to erase us, but we're still here. We'll rebuild. We'll survive. Ash turned her gaze toward me, her expression softening for the first time in what felt like forever. And we'll make sure that we are the ones who write the future. The journey wasn't over. The war was still out there, still calling to us from the dark corners of the galaxy. The Hive may have been broken, but they were not gone. The scars of the past were deep, but we had endured. As the Requiem drifted into the unknown, I knew that our future wasn't guaranteed. There were no certainties in this galaxy, only the fight for survival. The price of peace was steep, and we had paid dearly. But in the end, it was our fight that would define the future, not the Hive's, ours. I turned to Ash one last time, her face lit by the faint glow of the stars. "We're the last of humanity," I said. "No," Ash replied, her voice steady and full of quiet resolve. "We are the first of something new."